In a world cloaked in darkness, where the dead rest and nightmares awaken, if you dare to listen, you're about to step into the shadows of midnight screams. Not everyone who enters makes it out alive.
My name is Andrew, and I'm 21 years old. The events that unfolded during my teenage years with my friend Tyler still haunt me to this day. It was a night that changed how we viewed the world, a night where we learned just how quickly things can spiral out of control. It all started when I decided to spend the night at Tyler's house. We were both 16 at the time, and it was one of those rare nights when school was canceled due to an impending snowstorm. Living in Colorado, snow days were a part of life, but this particular storm was predicted to be severe, with heavy snowfall and treacherous roads. The school had already announced the closure for the next day, giving us a chance to relax and enjoy an unexpected break. I lived just a few houses down from Tyler, making it easy for me to grab a few things and walk over to his place. Our parents, like many others in the neighborhood, still had to go to work despite the storm, leaving us home alone. We were ecstatic, like any teenagers given a surprise day off. We spent the evening playing video games, laughing, and talking about all the strange and random topics that popped into our heads. The night went on without a hitch. We stayed up late, enjoying the freedom that came with knowing there were no classes the next day. But as dawn broke, things started to take a dark turn. The following morning, around 11 a.m., Tyler was in the kitchen making a sandwich, while I was in the bathroom. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a gentle ring. It was sharp and insistent, catching both of us off guard. We weren't expecting anyone, and in our quiet neighborhood, unexpected visitors were uncommon. Tyler joked about it, saying it must be a ghost or something silly, trying to lighten the mood, but I could sense a hint of unease in his voice. Curiosity got the better of us, and we both went to the door. We heard a man's voice calling out, "Please, I need help. If anyone's there, help me." The voice was desperate, pleading, and it sent chills down our spines. Tyler peeked through the window next to the door, trying to get a look at the man. What he saw didn't match the weather outside. The man was wearing shorts and a short-sleeved black t-shirt, clearly ill-prepared for the cold. His appearance was disheveled, and there was something off about him. I asked, "What's going on? Who are you?" Tyler shot me a glare, annoyed that I had let the man know someone was inside. Looking back, I wish I had kept quiet. Maybe he would have walked away. Instead, he started knocking harder, more urgently, begging us to let him in. There was a palpable sense of danger, and Tyler and I both knew something wasn't right. We didn't open the door. Instead, we bolted down to the basement, hiding in a small nook that Tyler had shown me during one of our previous hangouts. It was a secret spot, a place where we felt somewhat safe. Tyler quickly dialed his mom, who worked just 5 minutes away, and told her what was happening. She promised to rush home immediately. After the call, we heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps upstairs. The man had somehow gotten inside. Our hearts pounded as we realized this was no ordinary encounter. We had to act fast. Tyler whispered, "We need to get out of here." I was scared, but I knew staying put wasn't an option. We carefully opened the basement door and tiptoed toward the window we had planned to use as an escape route. Tyler climbed out first, and with his help, I managed to hoist myself up and out. Breathing heavily, I turned to thank him when we both noticed the man standing behind us just a few feet away. His eyes were cold, his expression unreadable. It was a face that I'll never forget. Without thinking, we sprinted towards the street, not looking back. As we reached the end of Tyler's driveway, his mom's car pulled in. Seeing her, the man hesitated for a moment before bolting in the opposite direction. Tyler's mom, noticing our terrified state, immediately called the police. When the officers arrived, we recounted everything. They showed us a photo, and we identified the man as an escaped convict who had been on the run for less than a day. He had a history of violent crimes, including kidnapping, It was clear we had narrowly escaped something far more sinister. That day left us shaken. It changed the way we saw the world and left a scar that never quite healed. Even now, I can't help but feel a shiver when I think back to that man's eyes and how close we came to real danger. Story 2. Last winter, I moved to a new house in a new city. I had only been to this city once before for a job interview, and when I got the job, I had to relocate. It was a huge step in my career, and I was excited for everything to go as planned. But since the city was in a somewhat isolated area, the move wasn't easy. I had to find a rental house online and finalize everything with the landlord remotely. I knew it wasn't the best way to do things, but I figured I'd only be renting for a year before I could find something better. On the 1st of December, I packed up everything I had into my car and hit the road. I only stopped for gas, yet I still didn't reach the city until around 9 p.m. As I mentioned, I had been to this city before for my interview, but I had never seen it at night. It looked different, almost eerie. The streetlights were dim, most of the shops were closed, and their signs were dark. I wasn't used to small towns, so it felt strange to me. There were barely any cars on the road, making it feel like I was driving through a ghost town. After about 5 minutes, I reached the neighborhood where my new house was located and parked in the driveway. The house was small, part of a row of nearly identical homes. I got out of the car with my air mattress and stepped inside. I had sold most of my furniture before moving, planning to buy new things once I arrived, so I expected to live in an empty house for a while. Inside, the house was pretty much what I had imagined, old and not very welcoming. The wooden floors creaked with every step, and the air smelled musty, like it had been shut up for a long time. The layout was simple, a single-story home with a kitchen, living room, and a hallway leading to the bedrooms. After a quick look around, I turned off the lights and headed to the master bedroom. I unrolled my air mattress and started inflating it with a pump. Exhausted from the long drive and the stress of moving, I sat on the floor, ready to finally rest. Then suddenly, I heard a noise. A faint creak came from the far end of the house. It was subtle but distinct, the sound of weight shifting on old wooden floors. The first thought that crossed my mind was that it could be some small animal that had taken shelter in the house while it was vacant. I got up and walked slowly toward the living room, hesitating to turn on the lights. I glanced around quickly. The room was empty, exactly as I had left it. There was no sign of anything unusual. I told myself it was nothing, probably just my imagination mixed with exhaustion and stress. After all, it was a new house, and I wasn't familiar with the sounds it made. I went back to the bedroom, found my mattress fully inflated, threw a blanket over it, and lay down to sleep. I had a lot to do the next day, so I wanted as much rest as possible. Despite the unsettling feeling, I fell asleep almost immediately. At some point in the night, I woke up. At first, I thought my eyes were still closed because all I could see was darkness. Then I realized the room was just that dark. I knew it must be the middle of the night, so I closed my eyes again, trying to go back to sleep. Then I heard it. A single creak from the floor, right in front of me. My eyes snapped open, and I sat up instantly. I stared toward the spot where I had heard the noise, but I couldn't see anything. The room was silent. So silent that I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. An uneasy, creeping fear settled over me. Then another creak, this time from the left side of the room. A chill ran down my spine. My brain struggled to rationalize it. Maybe I was still half asleep. Maybe I was imagining it. But before I could convince myself, 4 more creaks sounded, each one farther away, leading toward the end of the room. Then I saw it. A faint outline in the darkness. Before I could fully register what I was looking at, the bedroom door suddenly swung open with force. The dim light of the moon illuminated the hallway, and for a split second, I saw him. A man, dressed in ragged clothes, wearing heavy boots, stepping out of my bedroom and into the hallway. He moved quickly, his footsteps echoing as he ran toward the other end of the house. My adrenaline surged as I jumped to my feet and flipped on the light switch. By the time I reached the hallway, the front door was wide open, swinging slightly from the force of being pushed. From what little I had seen, the man looked like he was in his 40s, wearing worn-out clothes and boots. That was all I could process before instinct took over. I grabbed my phone and car keys and bolted outside. I got in my car and sped off as I dialed 911. The local police arrived soon after and searched the house. They suggested that maybe the man had been living there while it was vacant and got startled when I moved in. But there was no way to know for sure. If he had been living there, he wasn't just squatting. He had been watching me sleep. Thankfully, the landlord agreed to let me break the lease and move out immediately. If I hadn't woken up that night, I have no idea what could have happened. Story 3. This happened when I had just moved into a new house on the outskirts of the city. It was a small place, a bit away from the hustle and bustle, about a 20-minute drive from my previous residence. However, it felt more isolated and distant from everything. The area was surrounded by trees, and I couldn't see any other houses or roads around, which gave me a sense of peace and tranquility. On the day of the move, around dinner time, someone knocked on the door. It was an older man, probably in his 50s, with graying long hair and hollow, tired eyes. He greeted me, but there was something strange about his demeanor. He tried to chat with me, but his words were odd, and his face remained expressionless, devoid of any emotions or interest. It was as if he wasn't genuinely interested in talking. After he left, I thought maybe he was just a curious neighbor. The next day, as I was unpacking, there was another knock on the door. I opened it to find the same man. The first thing I noticed was that he was wearing the same clothes as the day before, and his expression was just as blank. He asked about how I was settling in, but it felt like he didn't have a real reason to talk to me, as if he was prolonging the conversation without a purpose. After a while, I had to cut the conversation short, telling him good night and closing the door in his face. The situation was becoming unsettling. I tried to forget about it and went back to arranging my things. But then, there was another knock, this time much louder and more aggressive. From the end of the hallway, I could see his silhouette through the curtain covering the window. I called out, trying to keep calm. "Please leave. I have a lot to do tonight." I was attempting to stay composed, but my irritation was likely evident. He didn't respond and just stood there, as if waiting. Then, after a few moments, he knocked again, just as forcefully. Frustrated and annoyed, I stormed to the door, ready to tell him off. I opened it with irritation, and there he was, standing unnervingly close, just a step away. His eyes were lifeless, and his entire body was eerily still, as if he was contemplating something. My eyes accidentally caught sight of his hand, and that's when I noticed a knife's blade peeking out from under his jacket sleeve. I quickly slammed the door shut, locking it just as he tried to push his way in. He started pounding on the door, harder and more insistent, without saying a word, as if plotting something sinister. I called the police and ensured all the doors were locked. The man stood outside for a while, then abruptly left. By the time the police arrived, he had vanished. I reported everything that happened, suggesting he might live in the area, but after checking around, they found no one matching his description. None of the neighbors had seen him before either, which made me even more uneasy. To this day, we still don't know who that man was, whether he's still in the area or why he came to my house with a knife. I'm hoping he's gone for good and won't return. Story 4. I had just graduated from college. I didn't have much money, but I was looking for a new job. At the time, my college buddy Chris and I decided to rent a house together and be roommates. He was making more money than I was, and planned to stay in the house even after I found a better job and moved out. The house was actually really cheap, cheaper than most apartments in the area, so we split the rent and expenses. Everything seemed to be going fine. Moving in was smooth. We each took a bedroom, and later, we went out to buy some extra furniture for the living room. On the first day we arrived, we found a note on the front door. It was a small card that simply said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." That wasn't weird in itself, but what stood out was that there was no name, no signature, just that one sentence written in handwriting. It seemed like someone was either playing a joke or being creepy on purpose. A few days passed, and we were settling into our routine. I was working at a pizza place at the time, and one night, after my shift, I got home and noticed someone standing near our house. It was a woman, though I couldn't see her clearly because it was dark outside. She was staring at one of the windows in front of the house. By the time I parked in the garage and came back out to ask if she needed help, she was gone. I thought it was odd, but figured it wasn't worth worrying about. She didn't seem dangerous, just kind of strange. That night I told Chris about it and we laughed it off. Nothing else happened that night. A week or so went by, and we both got comfortable in the house. Life was normal. That night I was working until 10 p.m., but I knew Chris got off work around 8. When I finished my shift and drove home, I suddenly felt a weird sense of unease. It was hard to explain, but something felt off. When I pulled up to the house, my stomach dropped. The front door was wide open. All the lights inside were off. I knew right away that something was wrong. Chris was supposed to be home by now, and there was no reason for the door to be left open like that. I parked my car, walked cautiously toward the house, and called out, "Chris, why's the door open?" Silence. I stepped inside and looked around. Everything seemed normal at first, but there was an eerie stillness in the air. I pulled out my phone and immediately texted Chris. A second later, I heard his phone buzz from down the hall, right near the kitchen. I walked toward the sound and saw his phone lying on the counter, screen lighting up. That was strange. Chris never left his phone behind, and if he had gone out, he definitely wouldn't have left the front door wide open. At that point, I didn't know what to do. Something felt seriously wrong. I decided to check his room upstairs. When I got to his door, it was open. I stepped inside cautiously. Everything looked normal at first. The room was quiet. Then I heard something behind me. I turned around fast, and there was Chris, standing inside his closet, peeking out. Before I could ask what the hell he was doing, he whispered, "Did you see anyone?" I shook my head, completely confused. His expression turned serious. "Call the police." The way he said it, his face, his tone, I didn't ask questions. I just pulled out my phone and dialed 911. We stayed completely silent in his room, waiting for the cops to arrive. A few minutes later, as soon as the officers entered the house, we heard fast, heavy footsteps running through the downstairs hallway. They caught her before she could escape. It was a woman. Her eyes were wild, full of anger and something else, something terrifying. Chris finally told me what happened. He had gotten home from work, put his things down in the kitchen, and went upstairs to change. That's when he heard it. A loud thud near the front door, followed by slow, deliberate footsteps moving through the house. He didn't know how many people there were, but he was trapped upstairs with no phone. He stayed completely still, hoping they would just take what they wanted and leave. But they didn't. Instead, they turned off all the lights in the house, and then walked toward the back rooms. Chris stayed hidden in his closet for over an hour, waiting, listening. And then I came home. She hadn't come to rob us. If she had, she could have stolen things and left. She had been waiting for one of us to come home, walk through the hallway, and walk right into her trap. To this day, we don't know what she planned to do. But after that night, we didn't stay in that house. Neither of us could. Story 5. This story is for you. Imagine that some of the board games we enjoyed during our childhood, like Snakes and Ladders or Monopoly, were actually linked to dark forces like magic, demons, or even the Illuminati. Sounds crazy, right? Well, let's dive into the intriguing tale of the first modern board game and see where it takes us. The game in question is The Mansion of Happiness, a board game created in 1800 by George Fox, a British designer. Originally intended for the aristocracy, this game was luxurious, with golden threads adorning its box and gilded letters on the board. It was a game for the wealthy, not the common folk who could barely afford newspapers, let alone a fancy board game. The game required 2 to 6 players, and it was designed to teach morality by navigating between virtues and vices to reach the ultimate goal. The Mansion of Happiness, a metaphorical representation of heaven. Players would roll a dice-like object, moving forward or backward based on where they landed. Virtues propelled them forward, while vices sent them back. What's unsettling about this game is its imagery. The board featured 67 spaces, each with a different depiction. Some spaces were empty, but others showed explicit images of vice and virtue. Fast forward to 1843, when the Parker brothers in the United States acquired the rights to this game. By 1884, they fully owned it and made several changes, toning down the graphic content to align more with American values. It was rebranded as America's First Board Game, and it gained massive popularity. Despite the changes, some believe that the original game was laced with sinister elements. Conspiracy theorists argue that it was designed to indoctrinate children with dark themes under the guise of teaching morality. They point to the explicit depictions and the peculiar use of symbols, like the beetle used as a dice, which some connect to dark, arcane practices. One of the most eerie aspects comes from testimonies about the original versions of the game. Some claim that owning and playing it brought misfortune, nightmares, and even psychological distress. A man who bought a vintage copy reported a series of unfortunate events and strange occurrences in his home, leading him to believe the game was cursed. In the end, whether you see it as a simple game or a tool of dark influence, the Mansion of Happiness remains a curious piece of history. It's a reminder of how even something as innocent as a board game can carry deeper, hidden meanings.